Hello everyone, welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Harry Reagan. Later, Emily Liska interviews Tim Gilmore, author of Malice Aforethought, A Century of Murder in Jacksonville. But first, the Historical Society's Most Endangered list. And our guest is Edward Booth, a member of the Historical Society Board. Ed?
Hello,
welcome.
Harry. It's good to be with
This
you.
is an annual update of our most endangered structures, historic structures.
It is. I believe this is the 7th year we have done this.
Mm-hmm. And they're not in any particular order. The first one you're going to talk about may not be the most endangered or whatever.
That's correct. And there'll be some old favorites on here and a few new additions that we'll spend some time talking about today.
Well, let's go to the list. And
this is our 2013 endangered list. The first is an old favorite, the Annie Lytle School, built 85 years ago in 1927. It stands at the junction of two of the busiest interstate highways in the country, Interstate 10 and Interstate 95. These highways have all but swallowed up the school. It's been vacant for a number of years. But as you can see from this recent photo taken about 2 weeks ago, the structure is sound. And if there was a use that could be found, it certainly could be reconstructed and put back to some use.
And it was endangered before the DOT made it even more endangered.
Very much so. It had been abandoned for many years, but in recent years it has had 2 levels of interstate added to its front yard.
Yeah. So there's a lot of noise and visual problems. It's just it's a long shot.
It's a challenge, but it's an important building to many people here in Jacksonville, and perhaps one of the more recognizable structures in Jacksonville. 100,000 people a day pass by its facade.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
Nearby on Riverside Avenue, Fire Station number 5. This was a working fire station up until about 10 years ago, served us well for nearly 100 years. Was a building that dominated Riverside Avenue at one time, and as you can see from this photo taken about 2 weeks ago, it has been swallowed up by the campus of Fidelity National and new development around there. But that may be its saving grace. It may find a new use as something like a restaurant, child daycare center. There are any number of things it could be turned into, so it may have a future. We
Firehouse
hope so.
subs.
Exactly.
And the building is in good condition.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's ready to go back to work. Next we have a vessel, something new for us, the St. Johns River Ferry. Now we've recently learned it has been saved for another year. The funding has come through. But this is by no means a long-term solution. It's a vital link in our transportation system, and it's certainly a historic site, a historic structure, if you will, for the citizens of Jacksonville.
But the funding is uncertain in the future.
Past this next year, it certainly is. So we're watching it closely. The vessel was built in '96 and certainly has many years of productive life ahead of it. Here's a new entry for our list, Harry, the Greyhound Bus Station down on Bay Street. It once dominated the landscape. It has been swallowed up by the tall buildings.
And Greyhound plans to move out.
And we have learned that they will be moving out in the near future to a transportation intermodal hub around the convention center. This is an Art Deco masterpiece that could easily be put to use as retail space, offices, or the like. When you look at coffee table books published around the country of neon signs as art, that particular sign almost always shows up. It's a local landmark, and we hope it has a bright future. On the residential side of things, the Horace Drew residence in Springfield remains endangered. And in past programs we've discussed its various attributes and how that we certainly hope someone will take it and do the type of restoration that it deserves. Another vehicle of sorts, the American Coastline Engine 1504. This engine is coming up on its 100th birthday. Was built for wartime needs, World War I. Ran up and down the eastern seaboard for the better part of its life, retired in the 40s. Familiar fixture on Water Street. until moved to the convention center about 25 years ago. It is the property of the city of Jacksonville, and it really needs to be indoors to preserve it long term. But a paint job at this stage wouldn't hurt, but it's suffering from, as you see here, some significant corrosion problems.
Just no maintenance.
It's been outdoors in the elements for
and it's rusting.
25 years. Yeah. The next building is familiar to our viewers, the Guaranty Trust and Savings, also known as the Jaguar Building,
right.
Where Ocean Street drops down on Bay Street. You make a right turn to go to Everbank Field. It has been rumored to have been purchased. We're not sure. It certainly has significant water damage and is nearing the end of the ability to renovate it.
But a great location, and with a roof and whatever.
It could be used for something. A new addition to the list this year, the old Duval County Armory, built in 1913 down on Union State Street, Liberty Street. Served as an armory. I think, to me, one of the intriguing historical side notes of this building is its use as a concert hall.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was home to John Philip Sousa and his orchestra around 1915. Elvis is rumored to have played there. And then
we can't confirm that. But
we are trying to confirm that, but we do know in May of 1970, at the peak of her career, Janis Joplin performed.
So from John Philip Sousa to Janis Joplin.
To Janis Joplin. It had quite a run and certainly has some new uses. It's in danger of being destroyed by water damage. It has some significant problems in the basement area. Owned by the city, those will hopefully be attended to, and it will have a future. The building is structurally sound, could last another couple hundred years.
There is the periodic flooding issue.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Another familiar structure, the Seminole Club, just to the west of City Hall, off of Hemming Plaza. Structure has been there since just after the Jacksonville fire. Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, once gave a speech from that front porch. It has been without an owner for 10, 15 years now, and certainly you would think with the federal courthouse on one side, City Hall on the other, that it would make an excellent prime office location.
It's kind of hard to understand. I think maybe the automated Skyway Express has hurt it.
That hemmed it in and made it difficult to sell it. The Barnett Bank, built in 1926, once the tallest building in Florida. Beautiful architecture. An attempt was made to renovate it about 10 years ago. That stopped midway. There appears to be some new interest in it. Together with its neighbors, what are known as the Laura Street Trio, which consists of the Florida Life Building, built in 1911, Jacksonville's first skyscraper. The old Florida National Bank, 1902, known as the Marble Bank. And then the Bisbee Building, 1908, at 13 stories. Again, one of the tallest buildings in Florida at the time it was erected.
And some very recent discussion about the trio.
That's correct. The proposal is not to preserve them as we might prefer. It is to build a wraparound structure that would marry the three buildings together with some common utility spaces, stairwells, extra space, and if it saves them, that may be the best we can hope for. Adaptive reuse, I think, is what the phrase is. The Ford Assembly Plant, this is a structure that very few people in Jacksonville know about because it's hidden under the Matthews Bridge. This was an assembly plant that churned out as many as 200 Model Ts a day, primarily for export to South America during the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Designed by a noted architect named Kahn, no relation to the current owner of the Jaguars, but a well-known architect, industrial architect, did a lot of work for Henry Ford. This is a recent view. You know it's recent because there's no traffic on the Matthews Bridge. It's shut down. But this gives you an idea of the immense size of this structure. Were it in a different location, it would have been the perfect home for something like the Riverside Arts Market. but it's a little bit out of the way. But we continue to watch it in hopes that a new use will be found for it. Just to the north of the new Duval County Courthouse sits Old Stanton High School. This was built almost 100 years ago. Is a solid structure that could be turned into senior apartments. You could redo the school building and open a school.
And several schools have had new lives as residential development.
They have. The old Duval High School down the street has been a senior residence for 25 years. But it's a nice looking building that has been well preserved, and hopefully something will develop that will allow that to be saved long term. Hemming Plaza is a new addition on our list, and this has become a lightning rod for controversy in recent years and months. There's even some pending legislation before the Jacksonville City Council to immediately remove all the benches and tables from Hemming Plaza, apparently to deny people a place to sit down. But it's a traditional gathering spot in downtown Jacksonville. At the center sits a Confederate War monument that was built in the late 1890s.
And the monument needs some work.
And the monument is in need of repair as well. But Hemming Plaza dates back to just after Abraham Lincoln's administration. It's been the center of downtown Jacksonville for as long as anyone remembers. And it has been a challenge for each generation of politicians as to exactly how to configure it.
All right.
Probably it's, well, we'll save that for a later program. The next item on the list are the Hogan's Creek improvements back in the late 20s to solve some drainage problems in the Jacksonville area. Henry Clutho was commissioned to design a nice-looking drainage system, which is something that you don't associate with drainage systems today. Today, a drainage system is something buried out of sight, but Clutho erected some handsome balustrades. And this gives you an idea of what it must have looked like during its prime. But it's crumbling and in need of repair, as you can see in this photograph. But it goes from around Shands Hospital and enters the St. Johns River right by the Maxwell House Coffee Factory and winds its way through downtown Jacksonville. Another building that we had taken off the list but are putting back on is the Snyder Methodist Church. It was saved, a new roof put on, but there's no apparent consensus on what it's to be used for.
The city owns it.
City owns it. It's open during the Jazz Festival as a performance space, used for little else. Another example would be the Brewster Hospital, which was carefully renovated and now sits vacant. So it's not only a challenge to renovate the buildings, it's a challenge that once you've renovated them to put them back to a useful purpose. And so we hope that a tenant, a full-time tenant, will be found for that structure. The Ambassador Hotel is one that has been on the list from time to time. Its proximity to our new courthouse would make it an ideal location for new apartments, renovated apartments. This was put up as an apartment building, 50 units, and I think could have some new life breathed into it as a result of the trend toward apartment living, particularly in downtown areas. We don't have time today to talk about losses, but we continue at the Jacksonville Historical Society to monitor structures that are historic, noteworthy, worth preserving, worth saving, and do what we can to try to keep them around for future generations to appreciate.
And we should say very quickly that we've had some successes. The St. James Building, now City Hall.
Exactly.
Used to be May Cohen's, Florida Theater, Prime Osborne.
And Friendship Fountain is a good example of that.
Well, Edward Booth, thank you very much for updating us on the most endangered list.
It's a pleasure, Harry. Hope to see you here this time next year.
And stay with us. Emily Liska will be here talking to Tim Gilmore, author of Malice Aforethought, A Century of Murder in Jacksonville, right after this.